Hello everyone, I'm Sharanya PS. In the previous video lecture, I have discussed some of the Swing components. As a continuation, in this session, I will be discussing these following Swing components: JList JComboBox JTable with Swing example programs. JList, once we implement this, it will be looking like this with a list of elements. JComboBox will be providing a set of values to be selected from the user. And one more which is very familiar, which we will be using in multiple applications, that is JTable. To display the table onto the output screen, we will be using JTable. We'll see all these three Swing components in detail with example programs. What is this JList? It supports the selection of one or more items from the list. It will give a set of elements or strings. From there, the user can select whichever required, and based on that, some other next event might be triggered. Here, the constructor used to build this JList or to design this JList is JList. In the parameter, we will be passing with the object item. These items are the list of values or the strings that need to be displayed as a list. These items are created as a separate array, and then it can be passed to this JList. Then if the list is very large, then there might be the requirement of a scroll pan. This is not coming as an inbuilt with respect to JList. We have to add it externally by calling the JScrollPan, which we have already discussed in the previous session, how we can use this JScrollPan. We can add this JScrollPan along with the JList so that all the lists whichever we have added can be seen clearly by using the scrollpan. Here JList will use two kinds of models. One we call it as a list model and one more list selection model. List model is responsible for accessing the list data. It will define some interfaces how we can access the list data. Actually, it deals with the content of the data. Whereas list selection model, which defines the method which will determine what list item or the items are selected from the list provided. These are the two models which will be used. When we have added these kinds of components, when the user interacts with these components, one or the other events will be triggered. How these events can be managed or handled? The event which is associated with the JList is list selection event. As we observe here, a set of elements will be, set of string or values will be listed. So the user will select any of the elements from that. So when user makes or changes a selection, or when the user deselects an item from the list, during that time this list selection event will trigger. Once this list selection event is triggered, it needs to be handled by using list selection listener, which will make use of a function or the method void value change, and here we will be passing list selection event. So LE is a reference to the object that generated the event. Here it may be list or some other way it might have generated the event. JList also allows for the user to select multiple ranges of items within the list. Maybe 2-3 items at a time the user may allow to select, which directly proportional to the selection mode which is opted when we build the code. That is, here we will make use of one of the method called as void set selection mode. That is how the user can able to select the list items. So here this mode will be given with the 3 different values. The mode what we are passing as a parameter to the set selection mode which will have three different values. First one as a single selection, second one single interval selection, third one as a multiple interval selection. The default is a multiple interval selection, which helps the user to select multiple ranges of items within the list. In a sense, the user can select at a time multiple items. With a single selection, the user can select only a single item. With single interval selection, the user can select one range of items. Allow a range to be selected by the user. With this single interval selection. Suppose if the user selected single selection as a mode with respect to set selection mode method, then it allows for the user to select any one item from the list displayed. If we see one more, how this index values, like the list will be displayed by using this JList. And next question is how it will be determined which item is selected from that list. That is, each item, whatever it is listed, will be associated with some values. These values we need to retrieve. That we can perform by using two methods. One is getSelectedIndex and one more object getSelectedValue. These both methods will help to obtain the index of the item whichever it is selected by the user. If user selected third item, its corresponding index value will be returned as a result by using any of these two functions. First, we'll see the value whatever it is returned will be varying with respect to these two functions. We'll see with respect to the first function, that is integer getSelectedIndex. Here, if the item is selected by the user, then this method will return the value as 0. Suppose if from the list the user has not selected any of the items, then this will getSelectedIndex method will return -1. With one more type of the method that we use here is object getSelectedValue. Here it returns a reference to the first selected value. That is, if no value has been selected, then it will return the null. That is, here whichever the object associated with that corresponding list, that will be sent as a return value. Here with respect to get which item has been selected from the list, we can make use of either of these two methods. One is getSelectedIndex or object getSelectedValue. Value here it will be returning is one index value whichever associated with respect to that item. Next we'll see one example first, and next we'll move to the next component. If you look into the example here, JList Demo is the class name what I have created. First, I will execute and show how the output will look like. This is the one list what it is projected here. This is how the list will be displayed onto the output screen. If the user selects any of this list item, then the corresponding event will be triggered. That is, here after triggering here the selection event is triggered, and then this event is handled by the event handler, and the operation or the response is given is here it is giving to display one text with the specification as current selection. Here it says whichever the list item it is selected. Suppose if I click as a Paris, then current selection Paris. This is how we should get the output. Now we'll look into the code how we can build this application. First, we will be beginning with a set of packages as we observe here. Import Java X Swing. All the Swing related components is a part of this Java X.Swing package. And the main class I have defined here with the name JList Demo. Here both are matching, and then I have created some of the object as JList JLab for JList and JLabel. Next, I have also created the scroll pan since I want to add if the list is beyond that size of the mentioned, whichever it is mentioned, then automatically it need to grab this list along with the scroll pan. Next, I have created one string which will give the items that need to be added onto the list. That is here a set of strings I have added by the array name as cities. And then here I have created the constructor by the name JList Demo. Here all the initialization of all the different components I have done. First I have created the frame, and the object I have referring to refer this JFrame is F. And next the list is created by using the method JList, and the object created is JList. Two ways I can use. Here I have already defined as JList. I can refer by using JList. So I need not to use once again JList here. Otherwise I need to mention JList followed by object name is equal to new JList. And here I am passing the cities, that indicates the set of cities values whatever I have created as a array. So JList is taking the array of items what we have created as a parameter. Next we are setting the selection mode. Like as we discussed, this is very important because how the whatever the items which is displayed, how the selection need to be triggered. Here list selection model that we are mentioning it as a single selection. We have already discussed there are three different methods can be used. One is single selection or single interval selection, or it can be a multiple interval selection. Here I am opting single selection as a selection mode, which indicates only one item can be selected from the list. Next method is I am adding the scroll pan here, and inside that I will be adding this JList. So scroll pan is embedded to the JList. Next I will be adding one simple label to display at the beginning. Choose a city from the particular screen at the beginning. And next, the very important thing, I have to perform some event if the user has clicked any of those listed items. In order to manage this event, I will be calling add list selection listener with list selection listener as a corresponding event handler. And the method that I am using here is void value changed and with respect to list selection LE. And here JList dot this add selection listener, in the sense with respect to this JList, this event is embedded or registered. This event handler is registered with the component called as JList. So that with respect to JList, if any event occurs, then this corresponding event will be triggered, or then it will call the intermediate event handler and it performs the event accordingly. And here first thing, as we discussed in the theory aspect, what this get selected index will perform. That is, it will obtain the index value of that JList, and it will be stored in one variable called as IDX. Whatever it is changed item, its index value is going to be selected and stored in IDX. And which item is selected, that we are going to check in the next one. And this get selected item, whatever the value it will return, if its selection occur, then it will be returning 0. If the selection does not occur, then this get selected index will return -1. Usually this get selected index normally will return some other values apart from -1, then it indicates that the item is selected. If it returns -1, then it indicates that item is not selected. Here after this condition, if suppose index is not equal to -1, then it displays JLAB, that is JLabel dot. In that label, I want to set the text message as current selection colon, and then I need to embed with the plus symbol I am mentioning. Here I am specifying cities, what I have specified current selection cities, and I will be mentioning IDX. What is this? IDX will contain the corresponding index value, whatever it is chosen by the from user in the item, that will be present in, say for example, if the user has selected third item, then its corresponding index value will be present. So it will be passed here and its value will be correspondingly set here. So it will be mentioning current selection cities and its value will be displayed here. And next, after that, here it is once again, if the user has not selected any item, then it will set once again choose a city. And this is how we are handling the event that is triggered by selecting the item. Next, one more important aspect here is we have already created the frame, and to frame we have to add all the components that we have created. That is, scroll pan we have to add, then label we have to add, and list we have to add. Along with that, we have to set the bound, in the sense where this need to be displayed onto the frame. Along with that, we are not setting any layout. By default, it will take the default layout whichever it is mentioned, and then set visible will be true. This layout will be by default, it will be choosing every time flow layout. And in the main function, we are just creating the object of the constructor that we have created. So this is how this entire program will be written to perform the major event whenever the user is clicking some list content, whichever it is displayed by using JList component of a swing. If we run once again, this is how the content will look like. Now, if I have chosen as Chicago, then it will display as current selection Chicago. This is how it will be. So, cities, whatever it need to be displayed onto the JList will be chosen and it will be embedded with that corresponding index value. This is the example program how we can implement this JList. Next, we'll proceed with the next one that we call it as a JComboBox. This is a combination of both text field and a drop-down list. When we create this JComboBox, we will be able to see a kind of text field kind of structure, but with a list of elements in a drop-down menu. So here it will be, whenever we use JComboBox, it shows a pop-up menu that shows a list and the user can select a option from that specified list. The method which we use to display this JComboBox is JComboBox, and inside that we are passing the set of item need to be displayed in the JComboBox. Here once again we are preferring the array that what we create with some array name that we will be passing as a object to this JComboBox. And next, if we are not added at the initial stage, in the later stage, suppose if we want to add few more items onto this JComboBox, it is also possible by using the method add item. And here we can pass the object which we want to add back to the combo box. Some events that will be associated with combo box. Here it will be having two different kinds of the events. One is action event and one more is a item events. Whenever some operation that is done by user with respect to this JComboBox, two kinds of event might be triggered. One is action event or it may be item event. What is this action event? Suppose if the user selects an item from the list, then during that time action event will be generated. Suppose if the user has deselect some item which is already selected or changes some item which is already selected, during those stage item event will be generated. So here how we can manage this. So here we can able to obtain what kind of event is generated or obtain the item which is selected by the user. That we can obtain by using the method get selected item. Which event will be generated is based on how the user is interacting with the GUI. Either if suppose if the user selects some item, during that time action event will occur. For that correspondingly we have to handle the event. If user selects some item or deselects some item, during that time item event will be generated. Whatever it may be, the kind of the event, if we want to find what kind of item is selected by the user, during that time we can use the method get selected item, which will return the object which is selected by the user. Now if we see one simple example here which is used for displaying the JComboBox with the event handling mechanism. Here we have defined the class name as ComboBox example and it implements the action listener. So we have registered in the very beginning itself. Extension we have mentioned. So here we have created one object as box and the constructor here created as ComboBox example, and inside that we have created the frame and the name given as ComboBox example. This is supposed to be displayed, but its size is mentioned very small, that's why it is not seen clearly. Next here we are using frame layout, flow layout. So we have set the layout how it need to be displayed, and we have created the JComboBox without passing any initial string values or array or the elements that need to be added onto the combo box, which is done dynamically. After that, after creation of JComboBox is done by using the method add item, and the values or item that I want to display is 1, 2, 3. This is how it will be looking to the output screen. This is all added to the box object, which is of a JComboBox method. Next, we are registered the add action listener with the current object which we have created, that is JComboBox. Next, we are trying to add this onto the frame and we are setting the visibility to true. Next, here inside the main function, we have just created the object of the constructor that we have created. Next is the function which is defined for handling the event, what it is supposed to perform. If suppose if the combo box changed dot equals is e dot get action command. This get action command will return some if some action is occurred, some command is chosen from the user. In such case, it will return the true value. In such cases, what it need to print? It is going to print user choose the index, and here it will be selected what corresponding index value of that will be chosen, and it will be displayed onto the output screen. That is box.getSelectedIndex. This getSelectedIndex function will return the corresponding index value from the menu, whatever it is displayed here. 1, 2, 3 is a list of item. It is displayed with respect to JComboBox. So its corresponding index value will be written. So as the output, we will get it as user choose the index. Suppose if I choose 1, then user choose index 1. This is how JComboBox will be working. In the upcoming video session, I will be discussing one hands-on session how we can implement this JComboBox with the different example program. Next is very important component which will be used in almost all of the GUIs that we create in Java. It is a JTable. This, as the name indicates, JTable is a component which is used for creating the table with a display by displaying a set of rows and the set of columns with a data. This rows will contain actual data, columns will contain the header details about what it gives as a data. In addition to this, whatever the table it has created, we can able to resize this table, or we can set some properties to the table or the data what we have created. To that we can set some properties, or the headings what we create, to that also we can set the separate properties. And this JTable does not provide any scrolling capabilities, as we observed in the previous method as well. With the combo box also, by default it will not provide the scrolling option. Even with the JList it was not provided, but explicitly we can provide this by using JScrollPan as a embedded with JTable method. And the method or the constructor which is used to create the JTable is, here we will be using JTable, and if we does not pass any argument, just a empty table will be displayed. If we pass JTable with data as a first argument and column heads as a second argument, what is this data refers to? The actual content of the table will be referred as data. This data is a two-dimensional array. With respect to the column heading, whatever we have mentioned, with respect to that we have to specify the data. And this object column heads will contain the set of columns that we want to display. It will be usually displayed in a one-dimensional manner. And what are the major methods that we have to like three models that are enclosed within this JTable are, first one is a table model. This table model is used whenever if we want to display the data in a two-dimensional format, normal way how we are accessing and displaying the table data. Next one, if we are using the model as table column model, then it specifies the characteristics of the column. Suppose if we want to make some changes to the heading, how it is displayed, or if we want to swap between the two columns contents, in such cases we will be referring table column head model. Next one is list selection model. It specifies how many items are selected from the table. These are the models which will be useful when we do some operations onto the table, not during just displaying of the table. Next, the event which is associated with this table is, one is list selection event and one more table model event. This list selection event will generate when the user selects something in the table. Maybe first row, first column, if it selects, this selection event will be triggered. Suppose if the table's data is going to be changed, if some methods if we have written with some events what we have written with the mouse event or with the button event, if the content of the data is going to be changed, in such case table model event will be triggered. Here the steps that we need to follow when we create the table is, first we have to use the method JTable. Then we have to suppose if the table content is very large, then we can embed the scroll pan. So we will be creating the scroll pan with the object, and then we will be adding this table to the scroll pan so that the scroll pan will be present inside the table. Next, we will be adding the scroll pan to the content pan of the applet or the swing what we have created. So as an example, this is a one common example what is discussed in the textbook. This is like creating the applet, how we can write the code. Applet is a small program which will be running. So here one major thing here extends JApplet. This indicates that it is a applet program, which is also a GUI which helps for the user to interact. Your first function it creates is a init. This is the initial method where it performs some basic operation like initializing of GUIs or setting some values. That's why it will create a separate thread and it creates the entire GUI. Next, it will be creating the try and catch option is mentioned here. Next, the major program which describes the creation of the table. How we can do it? That is, first here we are set one array by the name column heads with the content of the headings or the column name as F name, L name and age, and then with the column heads. And here we are using the data that need to be displayed onto the output screen. Since it contains three columns, we are adding it in a three different data. And then the table will be created by passing these two values as a parameter to JTable method. So JTable data comma column heads. And then one more option we have already checked is, suppose if we want to add the scroll pan, we have to create the scroll pan and then we have to add this table to scroll pan. So JScrollPan, JSP is created and the table which is created will be added as a component to that. And then we are just adding this JSP to the panel. This is how we can create a table. Based on the data, whatever it is created and the column whichever it is created, the table will be displayed onto the output screen. So these are all the different components what we have discussed in the last previous two sessions and including in this session. So we have looked into different kinds of components. How we can build the as a whole GUI now. As a separate components we have discussed. Now suppose if we want to make use of all these components as well as containers, how it is connected. How we need to add all these components. What is the order we have to follow? See, here first we will be creating the frame. This is the topmost component that will be created. It acts like a, as we refer, this acts like a container rather than component. Here we will be creating the panel. This panel will help to display the different components in a proper sequenced manner. And then we are, upon that we will be adding the separate components like JLabel, JButton, and upon that we will be handling the events, or we are setting some events to these components. So as a summary kind, how we need to create the GUI is, first we have to create the frame and then we can set some panel inside the frame which will display the content, and here to the panel we have to add the components, and to the components we have to add the listener, in the sense event handling methods. And next this suppose how these listeners, next it will be processed. Listeners need to be added onto the components and components need to be added onto the panel and panel need to be added onto the frame. That is, here it will just create all the different components, and next step is adding all these components or binding all these components together and to make it display or visible to the user. Next, as a the different kinds of layout, how we can display the different components. Just I will discuss three different layouts how we can use this component. Suppose if we see the output how it displayed, here we are added five different kinds of buttons with the label as red, green, blue, yellow and pink. The main point or the main interest here is how these buttons are displayed. It is displayed from left to right. It is not displayed in some other locations. It is in an ordered manner. How it is achieved? It is achieved by setting the layout as flow layout. Flow layout will allow the components to be listed from left to right in a very specific manner. This is where we can use this flow layout. And once we keep adding these components to the screen, it will be keep adding to the frame in a very systematic manner if we are using the flow layout. This is the usage of layout. Next one we are looking as a border layout. Same example, same program we are referring to display the different kinds of button, but here the major difference is we have used the border layout, which will allow the display of this button in a different manner. Here it refers this north, south, east, and this one west, and this as a center. So this button will be added to those particular locations, so that we will be ended up as a border layout. Next one is a grid layout. Grid layout will look like this. Here we can specify how many number of elements need to be displayed. Here we specified as a 2, 3. So 2 elements will be displayed to the bottom and 3 elements will be displayed in the beginning. This is grid kind of structure will be obtained if we are using the grid layout. This is apart from the syllabus, which will give how we can display the different kinds of layouts. As a summary, in these swings, we have discussed different aspects how we can create the graphical user interface. Swing is a component which is used by the Java developers to create the Java graphical user interface. We have discussed what is the major difference between Swing and the AWT. Swing is majorly which is defined by using Java extended package, the Java X.Swing, whereas abstract window toolkit which is defined under Java.AWT. Swing is very lightweight, whereas AWT is heavy weighted. In the sense, Swing will follow all the components that adding all those processing will be much easier when compared to Java's AWT. And third difference, major difference is Swing is a platform independent, whereas AWT is platform dependent. That is, look and feel will be varying depending on the operating system on which this code is running if we are using AWT. Whereas if we have used Swing, it does not dependent on the kind of the operating system on which the program or the GUI is running. And one more here is we are making use of Java X.Swing as a import package, whereas here with the AWT Java AWT GUI's creation, we will be importing Java.AWT. Swings provides much more advanced components compared to this AWT. These are the some basic difference between the Swing and the component. And next major aspect we have discussed is what is this container and a component. Container is acts like a holder which will hold all the different components. What is this component? Components are the separate visual views which will be provided by adding the different JFrame, JLabel, image, icon like that. It is a individual elements. These individual elements will be added to the container. So container acts like a holder for the different kinds of components. So we have discussed in the previous session, all these sessions, the different components like JFrame, JLabel. These are the methods that we have used to create all these. And image icon will allow for the user to define some image along with any of the along with the label or with the buttons. And text field will allow, JText field will allow to display a text field along with some content in the initial stage. And J button, this swing buttons are majorly of four different types. J button and J toggle button. Under that we have J checkbox and J radio button. Button is a simple button how it displays, whereas toggle button will provided with option on and off. Either it will be in any of the two states, whereas checkbox will allow for the user to select any of the items, like any of the one checkbox which we have added. And same it will hold good for radio button as well. And the tab pan will give a different tab to move for the users. And scroll pan we have observed which can be added to any other components as well, so that we can give some scrolling to the other components. And in this session just now we have discussed this list how we can be added, and the combo box how it can be added with the different items listed, and the table which used to display the table. These are the different swing components. By using this swing components and attaching the different events, we can build a very good graphical user interface to perform any kind of the application. We can implement by using these components. Thank you for listening.